Back on TYT Sports, we added one Francis Maxwell to the panel. This is how it originally started.
This was the OG team.
Well, not necessarily. The OG team, I believe, was
the OG
Ben,
team of this
Anna, and Jenk.
Oh, yeah, you're very true. This is my OG team.
This is your OG team. OG team, I should say. Colin Kaepernick deserves a spot in the NFL. We've been discussing this for a long time on the platform, and we know that it had absolutely nothing to do with his game film, has nothing to do with his ability to play the position. We know he is one of the top 30, 35 quarterbacks in the league. There is roughly 90.
Certainly one of the top 64.
Absolutely, that's what I said. There is 90 some odd roster spots for a quarterback in the league.
But
He's one of those.
Reasonably, just looking at starters and backups, he should be in the league. And all these arguments about his style of play, and he had
His vegan diet.
Right, his vegan diet, his commitment to football.
Well, that's the one I wanted to read, was not Colin Cowher, Bill Cowher, ex-Steelers coach, and now analyst for the CBS pregame show. Well, one thing to note before we get into his words is CBS, NBC, Fox, doesn't matter what the network is, they are not owned by the NFL, meaning somebody has to be in their ear physically stopping or telling them, no, you can't talk about this certain issue. It was pretty evident that they didn't talk about any off-field issues when it came to Ezekiel Elliott during the Giants-Cowboys broadcast. They didn't even mention it once, aside from what the injunction meant and why he could play, and that was it. It did prevent some others from talking about the anthem protests that were going on before the games, and there was a whole handful of them. But Bill Cowher's words before CBS pregame show are extremely contradictory towards really anybody who's been paying attention. I want to know what's in your heart, Cowher said of the currently unemployed quarterback. Are you really committed to want to come back in the National Football game, football league, and reestablish yourself as a National Football League player? Are you really committed to your craft? Are you going to take the opportunity that any team might give you? Continues to say, don't let the contract stand in the way. If you play, you will get paid. Colin, prove me wrong. Well, it's funny because it doesn't seem like he can prove anybody wrong if he doesn't have a job.
Well, the thing that annoys me about these takes, like there's horrible takes all around, right? And I understand that Colin Kaepernick should be playing in the NFL, and that's with me choosing not to really watch it this season. I'm in the same stance as JR, where I'll watch it if it comes around, but I'm not going to go out my way to buy and support a league that I think is quite firmly doing exactly what was done to Muhammad Ali, that it was done to John Carlos and Tommy Smith. And as, of course, you know my opinions, I've spoke with Kaepernick, and I just think that I wouldn't feel right about supporting this injustice. But it's amazing because you can witness how pathetic these sort of stances have been now when you look at just the box score ratings of someone like Scott Tolzien, who's throwing picks. He's thrown picks all over the place. He threw 2 pick sixes in 17 attempts this year already. Colin Kaepernick has thrown 4 interceptions on 331 passes.
18 attempts. Just
18 attempts?
Yeah,
just to go up on
it wasn't doing
Also a pretty good Wisconsin Badgers quarterback.
Yeah, well, that's Jason's Wisconsin bias is coming out. But anyway, so the thing is, you don't need to watch it as in depth. People are going out there as if people who have this take are so out of touch with NFL. I'll just admit that he's a bad quarterback. I've never stated that he's the best, and he's by far away not the worst.
He's 3 years removed, 3, or we at 4 now, from being
a Super Bowl
elite.
quarterback.
I mean, he seemed like he was going to transform the league. And then last year, he came back and he threw 16 touchdowns and 4 picks on a terrible team. I got it. I don't think any playoff team should have decided I'm cutting my quarterback and signing Colin Kaepernick. And to give the benefit of the doubt to some organizations, a team like the Jets, who has
their different plan.
Right, they have a different plan. They have a tanking plan. They're actually probably better off not signing Colin Kaepernick, right?
They want
so I'll leave Josh McCown out of it. And then some of the horrible performances yesterday, Andy Dalton. I mean, the funny thing is, the team that really should think about signing Colin Kaepernick is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that
makes a great deal of sense. But like, I get it, Andy Dalton was terrible, but he's a playoff quarterback and the Bengals are sticking with him. But these 2 teams, we mentioned it in the Turks and Jerks segment, the Colts and the Texans go into the season with questions at quarterback, either an injury to an elite quarterback in the case of the Colts, and they're not sure when he's coming back. At least missed week 1 and week 2 because Jacoby Brissett's going to start next week for the Colts. They come into the season with playoff aspirations. I'm not sure they have them now, realistically. And then the Texans unquestionably have playoff aspirations. They have an elite defense. They have an elite receiver. They have a solid running game, a solid running back, or running back, as we like to say in America. I don't understand why those teams who now have gone in with essentially a mediocre backup quarterback in Tom Savage and Scott Tolzien, who's now lost his job to Jacoby Brissett, why those teams don't have Colin Kaepernick on the roster. Unquestionably, it gives them a better chance to win.
Another one too, and these are teams that aren't good. Well, the Texans have the defense to be good, to at least compete and try to make the playoffs. We'll know later tonight if Trevor Siemian can play quarterback. Right. Because the Broncos were always an outside shot that I thought, like, in general, wouldn't be bad to have Colin Kaepernick on your team. I think this also
they just re-signed. I mean, they
re-signed Brock Osweiler.
They re-signed Brock Osweiler. So I mean, they're obviously, he's comfortable in the system. I get all of that, but yeah, I sort of like Trevor Siemian, and if I were a young team and trying to, I might give him a shot, but I would have Colin Kaepernick on my roster.
The other two teams that I think this could have been over with a long time ago. I really thought when the Seahawks expressed interest that they were going to sign him, and I was actually disappointed to hear Pete Carroll say, of all things, that he deserves to be a starter in the league. He fell into the same trap of just giving excuses instead of just answering the question: is my owner will not sign this player? Yeah. Now it could put Pete Carroll's job at risk by saying something like that, but. You look at that, you look at John Harbaugh. So you look at Pete Carroll and John Harbaugh, who are two of, I would say, the smartest coaches in the league. Obviously, two of the most successful coaches.
Right, and those seems like the teams he got closest to signing with.
And the two coaches that, in a league where there's just not that many, they've had the security for the last few years to lead their team to the playoffs time and time again, and they both won Super Bowls. The excuses are what eventually just build up to the point of just complete frustration. Because John Mara, to his
at least
crappy credit, I don't want to deal with the backlash.
Exactly.
He at least said what many owners refuse to say, which is, I can't deal with the backlash. Now, it's also complete BS, because what I've been saying is, if fans really give up their season tickets, right? Oh, they signed Colin Kaepernick. How could they sign Colin Kaepernick? I can't go root for my team anymore. First of all, owners make more money, because the next guy in the waiting line gets his ticket. They get to ramp up the seat licensing and the pricing. So from the business decision, it's kind of complete bullshit that signing Kaepernick would be detrimental to your team. Yeah. But additionally to that, you're going to pull, at this point, you're going to pull in new fans, and he's still got a top 10 selling jersey in the league. So we know it's excuses, and we know he can play football. And the thing you mentioned just before in the actual recap clips, he's 230. He's still in his carrying his football weight around. Yeah, he's in shape.
The one I wanted to get to the quote that you mentioned there, because that is the one that kind of has my blood boiling more than a lot of like the ridiculous takes, right? So you can just kind of take them like the vegan diet.
The Cowher.
Yeah, this one recently annoys me, because this is one that I've heard from the clown that is Ray Lewis and from other people saying he needs to show this. He needs to tell people that that football is all that's on his mind. He doesn't owe you shit. He doesn't owe you his need to come out and say, no, by the way, what I did, that's that, and this is football. My mind's on football. That's you trying to perpetuate some sort of narrative in your head to justify that the only way this black athlete was going to risk everything was to just simply because he wanted to come out and say it, but also he wants to remind you that football is still on his mind. Football wasn't on his mind when he did that, because in a normal functioning environment, you should be able to speak out in a free country and not risk losing your livelihood. You should be able to come forth and say what you feel and not have to run the risk of the same treatment that Muhammad Ali outlined in 1971.
If I could clarify that in my mind a little bit more, because by one token, we don't mind that people who went to the march in Charlottesville lost their jobs, right? They were identified on Twitter. The torch carriers.
Talk about the Nazis.
The Nazis, yeah. Nazi sympathizers.
Just want to be.
That's the same thing. Lots of good people
just want to be
both sides.
Clear.
No, so so they exercised their right to free speech, and then their companies exercised their rights and thought, I don't want that kind of person at my company representing it. So Colin Kaepernick gets to exercise his rights, there's no question, and then his employer in a private industry gets to say, I don't like that right. What we're objecting to is not the speech. It is because we all know he gets to say it. He gets to say it. He has a platform. If he wants to be on the news somewhere every day, he could go around the country and he'd make news. And I suspect you could probably get somebody to sponsor that tour. The problem is a black athlete speaking out for social justice. That's what he did, and that's what they're objecting to. Not that he spoke his mind. It is specifically, It is specifically what he says that they object to. And so what is terrible, I just wanted to expand to take what you're saying.
No, I get it.
It is that we, because you mentioned John Carlos and Tommy Smith, and you mentioned Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown to some extent, and certainly hurt his ability to market himself when he spoke out. But when you are a black athlete and anybody now, but particularly a black person standing out for social justice, people are some people, corporate people, are turning you off. And so it is not, what I'm trying to do is avoid getting this sent back as, well, what about this? I get it, they get to cut him. There's no question, they get to do it.
Yeah.
But it is wrong that when people take a stand and fight for social justice, that somehow that is turned against them in America. There are plenty of objectionable things that you could say that would get you to lose your job. He didn't take a stand against the flag. He didn't take a stand against America. He took a stand up for something he thought needed to be discussed and confronted. And it's a shame that he's being blackballed for that.
No, I think that's a really important point to highlight. And to piggyback on it, the reason why that it frustrates me is because it's almost like he owes people not an apology per se, but he owes them an explanation. When if you really read between the lines, you can see what Colin Kaepernick's focus has been on. I spoke to the man firsthand, and he has been training. He's in impeccable shape, but he's also not moving away from what his goal is, which is donating to many different organizations, which is helping uplift these communities, and that's where his focus is on. He doesn't want to owe Ray Lewis some sort of explanation as to why he should be given a second. If Ray Lewis, if anyone should understand about someone getting a second chance, it's that guy. So, and another thing that justifies, I'm not just doing this to try and highlight how much of a humble and interesting and amazing person that Kaepernick is. When I met him, he actually voiced to me, because he's not done any interviews or anything else, when I talked to him, I talked to him about the Michael Vick situation, because that just came out, and he was able to rise above a situation that he could have came out and responded and went after these people that are consistently asking him. But his point to me was, I don't want to decriminalize black athletes and have them be used as pawns for my argument. He didn't want to go through the whole process of Michael Vick he did this and he was given a second chance. He wanted it just to be looked at as what's going on with my situation. Don't decriminalize more black athletes through the system. And I thought that was so honorable, because he could have easily just taken the lowest hanging fruit and went, yeah, why is Michael Vick coming out and saying this when he was the guy that went and was in a dogfighting ring?
Look, I wish that somebody stood up for him and signed him because they thought it was an important thing to do. Yeah. That rather than fear the backlash, would embrace it. Yeah, some people are gonna get mad at you. There's gonna be some stories. You might lose some fans. If it's a team with a significant wait list, you got nothing to worry about, as you said, Jason.
Yeah.
But these, mostly, of course, what these guys are concerned about is winning. Does he help you win your games? Does he make you a better football team? So why do they always say football team? Why do we always say football team? Why don't we just say team? Only in football. We don't say baseball team.
Well, sometimes it's a great
You don't say better
play.
basketball team.
They're going to make it a better basketball. It doesn't even
you just say team.
Yeah,
you just say team.
But sometimes look, that affects the fact that it could be a great football play.
That's a great football play, that's right. So Brock Osweiler was, the Browns traded for him and then they cut him, right? By the way, trading for Brock Osweiler was divisive because he's terrible, right? Or has been terrible, and I wish him success. But so if you don't like your quarterback after you sign him, it's the NFL.
You cut him.
You just cut him, right? There's no reason that a team can, that if one of these teams that needs some help right now, if the Texans don't want to start Sean Watson right now, right? This is a guy who they should have had, Colin Kaepernick should have already been there in Houston. Then, for the love of God, you bring him in now, and if it turns out that what Bill Cowher and Ray Lewis said, Francis, that he wasn't committed, well then 10 days later you're like, hey man, he's not really into it.
Yeah.
You can cut him. That's fine. You don't have to sign him to a 1-year contract that guarantees you. It's the NFL. You cut guys all the time. You want to bring him in to compete? Bring him in. He might make your team better. He was a pretty good quarterback last year on a terrible team, and of course has been, in fairly recent memory, pretty brilliant in the NFL.
Yes, they talk about, here's where I get confused, right? So for one of the things that you always mentioned is if you're a boring player, let's say boring in the press conference or afterwards, people aren't gonna talk to you, reporters aren't gonna talk to you. Now with Kaepernick, it's a little bit different because hypothetically, and this is pure speculation, but go with it if you will, he gets signed to a team, let's say the Texans do sign him. Obviously that first week, that first game is going to have more national attention than any other game in the country, and maybe even week 2, and maybe even week 3. But eventually, You don't think by week 10, it's been played out?
Also, yes, of course.
You're talking about a month of a lot of attention, which you might want.
Right. Not only will the attention die down, but your fans, which you're so worried will stream away, will inevitably, because they love the team, learn a little bit more about Kaepernick. And Francis can attest. What happens when you learn more about what Kaepernick really stood for?
Yeah.
You end up liking him more. It's inevitable that the reason Kaepernick is being blackballed is because the impression is he's anti-American. He's a black radical who hates the country. That's the thought. By the way, clip that out, make me sound like an ass. Is the impression that he hates America and doesn't want to stand with the troops. None of that is true.
Yeah.
He took a stand for what everybody should want. Everyone, literally, whether you support the police unconditionally or not. Well, I would certainly like it if innocent people weren't killed accidentally by police. Everybody wants that. And he's working to make that happen. He wanted to call attention to that. The more you read about him, the fact that he is not a showboat, that he is not out there trying to drum up press constantly, that in fact, if I were advising him, I'd be like, you should do some more interviews, if that's what you want, but that might help him. But none of that is true with Colin Kaepernick. So the more you read and learn about Kaepernick, the more you like him. And if you're a dedicated Texans fan, but you hated Colin Kaepernick, my hunch is you're still gonna be a Texan fan, and you'll find over the course of 3 or 4 weeks, you know what? Actually, he's not that bad a guy.
Especially if he wins. I wanted to bring up one of the things, because it doesn't necessarily play into the Kaepernick thing, but in a way it's all tied together. When it comes to, well, 2 things. One, they talk about the distractions in the locker room, which again is a false narrative about it being a distraction. Just look at Chip Kelly's words about being in the locker room with Colin Kaepernick and how he wasn't a distraction. So from the one source from the one coach who was inside the locker room, as opposed to everyone else who speculates outside of it. But for one, everything that's been happening, unfortunately, with Michael Bennett and Martellus Bennett, we don't talk about the distractions that the Bennett brothers are causing inside the Packers and the Seahawks locker rooms, even though they are standing up for the exact same thing or taking a knee for the exact same thing that Colin Kaepernick is. But on a little bit of a side note, one of the things I found interesting.
Jason Peters, like somehow
Marcus
the Chiefs,
Marcus Peters,
somehow the Chiefs are managing.
No problem. One of the things I found so interesting was the Dallas Cowboys played the Giants last night on Sunday Night Football, so national TV. And one of the things I took notice to was for that, and I don't want to lump everybody into one category in one state, but we could put together via demographics that Dallas, Texas in itself is a red state, right? Am I correct?
Sure, Dallas is. Texas is
historically.
Dallas isn't, but okay.
But in general,
whatever, yeah.
We know there's a lot of commentary. There's a lot that comes from Dallas that was always been anti-Kaepernick and pushes that narrative. And one of the things that they constantly bring up all the time is about the flag, how it's disgraceful for the flag. Why is there a Texas flag sharing the field with an American flag then? I found that very strange because you don't have the New Jersey flag out when you're playing the Giants.
Yeah, I get Texas.
New York.
Texans have a Texas thing. They love Texas. I love Texas.
Isn't it hypocritical in a way to say that they're so for the American flag, but they feel that their own state's flag should be
I don't think so.
Sitting there? I just took notice to it because I haven't seen it before. I haven't seen that in football. But I don't think I've seen it in football before. I've never seen the California bear next to the American flag in San Francisco.
It probably is at the Cal games.
Well, the bear itself.
Yeah.
But I get what you mean, like that sense of patriotism that you stand.
It's all about
America. But we just talked about that as well. The same people who undoubtedly pledge that, uphold that allegiance to the American flag. It's this misconstrued way of patriotism that you cannot question the problems with it. The same way that you talk about when it comes to police is like, oh, you can honor the police so much and you can be so thankful for what they do, but questioning them is considered unpatriotic. When if you look into the teachings of what some of the people who have been brilliant in this country have talked about, is like James Baldwin quotes himself. I say it all the time. It's that you loves America more than any other country in the world, and for that right, he wants to be able to criticize it because you want to make things better and you want to be able to stand up and make something better than what it is. And it's just, by this point, it's just a means of deflection. If you look at what's going on in the country and you cannot open your eyes to see that there is a disproportionate, that's for you, Ben Shapiro, after your latest attack on me, disproportionate amount of black Americans fallen victim at the hands of police brutality in regards to white Americans, then you are just simply avoiding the truth for whatever reason it may be, at least just come out and say it. Because it's the same sort of avoiding the truth that people will do when it comes to Kaepernick. Oh, he was garbage the last 3 years. Oh, this guy's better than him. He's more experienced. He's not a distraction. It's just easy answers to justify in their head a hatred of a black man speaking out against a white narrative.
This will be unpopular, but I've said it before. I mean, we could solve some of this problem if we stop playing the national anthem before sporting events. Like, I got it. I think it started in the 1930s in the World Series.
It did. Do you know why?
No.
It's a baseball thing. It started at a Cubs game because the fans weren't getting into it. It was really silent, so they had the military band play the national anthem like during the 7th inning stretch, and people went nuts.
Yeah, so we don't have to do it. I don't know why we have to. I mean, we don't do it before a rock concert. That's a gathering of people. We don't do it before a.
Is it?
I mean, it's a large number of people. We don't do it before a play. How about before every movie?
So I do.
Right before every movie, there's a lot of. If there's more than 50 people there, we bring out the color guard and we play the national anthem.
It is an unpopular opinion. Do you think "God Bless America" is okay?
I don't. That's a terrible song. I hate it.
I think that I've heard great versions, great renditions of the national anthem. Like when you get, depending on who's out there.
I don't mind it. I just think it's weird. Like, and I don't like the militarization of it. Like, I don't mind what I prefer.
First of all, the NFL has sponsored militarization. They don't. They're not there to. They always highlight this. Here comes our troops. And they're paid to be there. The NFL doesn't actually care.
I don't know whether the NFL can look. Patriotism is important.
By the way, the NFL is paid.
Value in being patriotic, but being patriotic can demonstrate itself in a lot of really valuable ways. It doesn't have to demonstrate itself by this notion that somehow, if you don't like that I don't like that before sporting events we have flyovers of military jets. I don't like it. I want us to have big, bad, impressive military jets to defend us when that is necessary.
Yeah.
But all of this is about making us easy, making us comfortable and at ease with the militarization of our democracy. And all of that is part and parcel with sending young men and women off to die in foreign wars and never seeing their bodies and never seeing what happens to them and never seeing the caskets. And I don't think it serves us. I love this country. I am enormously proud to be an American, but I don't like any of that. And that doesn't make me unpatriotic. And if members of my community were being killed at a highly disproportionate rate, and go back in time, and if members of my community had been enslaved, legally forced to work for no money, would we have objected then if we'd had sporting events then and played the national anthem? Would the slaves have had to stand? Like, I got it, we've made progress. It's not exactly the same thing, but somebody taking a stand for social justice, we should reward. That is exactly what we should. We don't have to agree, but we should reward it and understand it. And punishing somebody for taking a stand for social justice, somebody in a prominent position, seems insane. And we should all be a little bit ashamed of the way the NFL, which again, maybe the most visible corporate logo in America, we should all be a little ashamed that they've blackballed a guy who's between the 23rd and 34th best quarterback in the league. Man. This is like he's not just sign him, let him be a backup, let him have a chance to play. Eventually, if he doesn't get any better, if he plays the way he did in 2014 and 2015, he'll play himself out of the league.
Nice speech, Ben. All that being said, you're kind of being a distraction, so we need to move on and get to our other clips.
Yeah, distraction. Taking a stand.
Thanks, Ben. It's good seeing you.
Right, I know when I'm not.
No, it was a great. We couldn't take out on that
October?
speech like 6 months.
November?
October of next year.
Next year, week 5.
Appreciate it.
Look forward to it.